This is USVI News, your Virgin Islands connection.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for USVI News. I'm Emily Matson. This week, the CDC adds nearby Puerto Rico to the list of places with very high COVID-19 transmission rates and recommends Americans to avoid travel to. The CDC elevated the U.S. territories, Puerto Rico and Guam, to level 4, which means there is a very high level of COVID-19, and they are recommending people do not travel there. The U.S. Virgin Islands remains on that list of places in the level 4 category, as the territory's been on it since early August now. The agency Monday did not explicitly advise Americans to avoid going to Puerto Rico, but noted those who do travel there should make sure they are fully vaccinated. Here's a look at the other Caribbean destinations in the level 4 category, considered to have a high level of community transmission. St. Lucia was also added to the CDC's highest warning level this week. Other islands the CDC is advising Americans to avoid heading to include the British Virgin Islands, St. Martin, and Dominica. The Bahamas, too. And coming up a little bit later in the newscast, we'll have a closer look at just how bad it's getting there in the Bahamas. So the surge in COVID-19 cases in nearby Puerto Rico, led by the more contagious Delta variant, is leading to a concerning rise in the number of intensive care hospitalizations and deaths in the territory. Our USVI News' Christian Ramos has more from Puerto Rico.
The Delta variant of COVID-19, which is more lethal and contagious, continues to spread here in Puerto Rico, and now more people are ending in the ICU, including children. A very concerning scenario for the local medical sector.
I'm concerned that there are many patients that are being admitted in critical condition. I don't know if it's because the Delta variant is much more aggressive and more virulent. It is definitely a large number.
273 deaths triggered by COVID-19 were reported in August, the highest monthly rate in all the pandemic. From those, almost 250 of the disease were not vaccinated.
The vast majority of the persons that are getting infected and ending up in the hospital is mostly made up by people who are not vaccinated. It's like 85% of the people that are admitted to the hospital right now are persons that have never been vaccinated or have been vaccinated with only one dose. I need to say and make this very clear. The chances that you will end up in the hospital, you're vaccinated, even with the Delta variant, is much smaller than if you are not vaccinated. And the numbers are very clear regarding that. It's like 85% of the cases that are hospitalized right now in Puerto Rico, even with the Delta variant, is like 15% if you're vaccinated versus 85% if you're not vaccinated.
Cabanillas also explained that with the Delta variant, pediatric cases are increasing and hospitals have more children in intensive care.
There are more children out in the hospital, and there were months ago before the Delta variant. Whether they are becoming more sick or no, I think they are. Because it would be extremely unusual for children to end up in the ICU. We have 28 cases right now in the whole island that are admitted to the hospital, much more than there were 2 months ago when the number was 12 to 15.
According to the CDC, Puerto Rico has now a very high risk of infection, but Cabanillas assured that with the vaccination rate going up, the cases and mortalities will decrease. Reporting from San Juan, Puerto Rico, Christian Ramos.
That is the hope. And here in the Virgin Islands, some good news in terms of COVID cases here. They're down a lot from last week. Here's a look at the latest COVID-19 case counts in the territory. While numbers have gone down, they are still high. 180 people are currently testing positive for coronavirus. Last week, we were near 400 many days. According to the latest numbers from the VI Department of Health, there are 97 active cases in St. Croix, 78 in St. Thomas, and 5 in St. John. According to the VI Department of Health, all the people currently hospitalized because of COVID have not been fully vaccinated. Moderna has submitted data to the FDA for a booster dose of its COVID-19 vaccine. This would be the second vaccine maker following Pfizer-BioNTech to submit an application for a third dose of its vaccine. The company shared data from a phase 2 study offering a booster to more than 300 interested people 6 months after their second dose, saying the antibodies appeared to be active against variants including Beta, Gamma, and Delta. About 370 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccines have been given across the U.S. as of Tuesday. And as COVID-19 cases surge across the U.S., especially among unvaccinated Americans, hospitals are really being pushed to their limits, even happening here in the VI. 5 states, though, are nearly out of ICU beds. The good news, though, a new poll shows the number of people saying they are not likely to get a COVID-19 vaccine is declining. Mandy Gaither has the latest on the battle against COVID nationwide.
With COVID-19 cases continuing to climb, some U.S. hospitals are at a breaking point.
Delta is just ripping through the hospitals in ways that we couldn't have imagined.
In the South, where vaccinations have been lagging, hospitals have been hit especially hard. Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Florida, and Arkansas have only about 10% of their ICU beds left, according to the Department of Health and Human Services.
I had to turn away a cancer patient that needed emergency treatment simply due to the fact that my hospital didn't have any beds.
A CDC vaccine advisor says the hospitalization rate is 16 times greater in the unvaccinated population than in those vaccinated. And according to a new poll, the number of Americans saying they are not very likely or at all likely to get a COVID-19 vaccine has dropped from 34% in March to 20%, a new low in the survey. As for children,
the number of pediatric cases are increasing, and they are going to keep increasing.
The American Academy of Pediatrics is now reporting a 5-fold increase in the number of children testing positive from a month ago. But the number of parents who said they'd likely vaccinate their children has also risen by 12 points from 2 weeks ago. 68% of those polled now say they're likely to or already have vaccinated their children.
It's a scene, unfortunately, residents can relate to here in the Virgin Islands. Power is still out for nearly 1 million households in the Gulf Coast after Hurricane Ida swept through earlier this week. Gas is becoming more scarce as lines get longer for food and water. Reporter Brian Todd has more from the New Orleans area.
Days after Hurricane Ida made landfall, conditions now dire for those left in its aftermath. We went through a neighborhood in Kenner, Louisiana, where roofs were completely torn off houses.
We need help.
Patricia Carter's house in that neighborhood has been without power since the storm. Her food's rotting, and she's worried about running out of water. Carter's 72 years old. She says she has high blood pressure, arthritis, and migraines, but she's also worried about elderly neighbors and wants to know when the cavalry's coming.
Nothing whatsoever. You all even see a FEMA truck come down. And being honest, we thought y'all was FEMA. You know, because some kind of assistance should be out. You know what I mean? What we had to do, get 10 feet of water to get help.
Katrina was bad, but this is worse, way worse than Katrina.
Residents quickly running out of food and water.
We already ran out of food. We have a little water.
Are you worried about where you're going to get it?
Yes, we are. We really don't know where we're going to get it at.
Across Louisiana, nearly 1 million people are still without power. The heat index continues to top 100 degrees in parts of Louisiana with no relief for many. Parts of the state bracing for weeks without power.
Our first priority as city government is getting the power restored.
Only a few lights spotted in New Orleans, with power restored for a small number of residents in parts of the city today. Louisiana utility company Entergy telling customers full restoration will still take time given the significant damage across the region.
You lost 8 transmission lines that power the entire city. We're keeping the pressure on so the energy goes up.
Basic necessities scarce. Half of the gas stations in New Orleans and Baton Rouge nearly out of fuel, desperately needed to keep generators running. Officials in hard-hit Plaquemines Parish enacting a complete lockdown of the area today after losing water service due to a failed generator. Only those involved in recovery efforts are allowed in.
I've never seen it look like this. It's decimated.
The destruction in Grand Isle, Louisiana, widespread. Some houses reduced to piles on stilts. One official says nearly half of all homes have been destroyed, estimating it will take up to 5 years to restore the town.
A lot of people have lost their homes, talking about they don't know whether they'll be able to go back or not because they don't have the money to go back, can't afford to go back.
Such a heartbreaking scene. Our thoughts go out to those dealing with this right now. Ida made landfall in Louisiana on Sunday as a strong Category 4 hurricane. It has weakened since, but has still dropped heavy rain across the southeast on its way north. And overnight in New York City, they saw massive flash flooding. Those areas are still bracing for more potential flooding.